The brother and sister. A certain man had two children, a boy and a girl. The lad was a handsome young fellow, but the girl was as plain as a girl can well be. The sister, provoked beyond endurance by the way in which her brother looked in the glass and made remarks to her disadvantage, went to her father and complained of it. The father drew his children to him very tenderly and said, "My dears, I wish you both to look in the glass every day. You, my son, seeing your faces handsome, may take care not to spoil it by ill temper and bad behavior. And you, my daughter, may be encouraged to make up for your want of beauty by the sweetness of your manners and the grace of your conversation." Lesson: handsome is as handsome does. The frogs and the fighting bulls. A frog one day peeping out of a marsh saw two bulls fighting at some distance off in the meadow. "Alas, my friends," cried he to his fellow frogs, "whatever will become of us?" "Why, what are you frightened at?" asked one of the frogs. "What can their quarrels have to do with us? They are only proving which shall be master of the herd." "True," answered the first, "and it is just that which causes my fear, for the one that is beaten will take refuge here in the marshes and will tread us to death." And so it happened, and many a frog in dying had sore proof that the fears which he had thought to be groundless were not so in fact. Lesson: coming events often cast their shadows before. The Leopard and the Fox. The leopard one day, in the hearing of the fox, was very loud in the praise of his own beautifully spotted skin. The fox thereupon told him that, handsome as he might be, he considered that he himself was yet a great deal handsomer. "Your beauty is of the body," said the fox. "Mine is of the mind." Lesson: beauty is skin deep. The Three Vases. By a lifetime of scraping, a miser once hoarded up a large quantity of gold, which he placed in 3 vases and buried. When at length, being on his deathbed, he called his 3 sons to him, and informed them of the treasure he had left them, and of the spot in which it lay hid, in 3 separate vases, one for each of them, he could not finish all he had to say. A fainting fit seized him, and he expired. Now, as the young men had never seen these vases, they concluded that in all probability they would differ in size and value. And as their father died before he could assign to each his particular vase, that business must be settled by themselves. Thus, on the division of their wealth, they entered into a warm dispute, each laying claim to the largest vase. One because he was the eldest, the second son because he had no property in lands to support him, and the youngest because he was the favorite of his father, and therefore was sure the largest share would have been bequeathed to him, had his dying parent been but able to finish his last speech. Words at length ran very high, and quickly came to blows, from which none of them escaped unhurt. When, after all this wrangle, ill blood and mischief done, it was discovered on digging up the 3 vases that they were exactly equal in size and value. Lesson: be sure of your cause before you quarrel. The Mouse and the Lion. A lion, tired with the chase, lay sleeping at full length under a shady tree. Some mice, scrambling over him while he slept, awoke him. Laying his paw upon one of them, he was about to crush him, when the mouse implored his mercy. "Spare me, O king," said he, "and maybe the day will come when I can be of service to you." The lion, tickled with the idea of the mouse helping him, lifted his paw and let the little creature go. Some time after, the lion was caught in a net laid by some hunters, and, unable to free himself, made the forest resound with his roars. The mouse, whose life had been spared, came, and with his little sharp teeth soon gnawed the ropes asunder and set the lion free. Lesson: the least may help the greatest. The Stag in the Ox Stall. A stag, hard pressed by the hounds, ran for shelter into an ox stall, the door of which was open. One of the oxen turned round and asked him why he came to such a place as that, where he would be sure to be taken. The stag replied that he should do well enough if the oxen would not tell of him, and covering himself in a heap of straw, waited for the night. Several servants, and even the overseer himself, came and looked around, but saw nothing of the stag, who, as each went away, was ready to jump out of his skin for joy, and warmly thanked the oxen for their silence. The ox who had spoken first to him warned him not to be so sure of his escape, and said that, glad as they would all be for him to get away, there was a certain person still to come whose eyes were a deal sharper than the eyes of any one who had been there yet. This was the master himself, who, having been dining with a neighbor, looked in on his way home to see that all was right. At a glance he saw the tips of the horns coming through the straw, whereupon he raised a hue and cry, called all his people together, and made a prize of the stag. Lesson: the eye of the master does more than all his servants. The fox and the goat. A fox once fell into a well and tried vainly for a long time to get out again. At last a foolish goat came by and asked the fox if the water were good. "Splendid," said the wily fox. "It is so fine that I cannot get enough of it." The goat eagerly leaped in, when the fox, taking advantage of the other's horns, climbed out to safety. "If you had half as much brain as beard," said the fox as he sneaked away, "you would have bethought yourself how to get out before you got in." Lesson: use a man as he deserves. The eagle, the cat, and the sow. An eagle had built her nest in the top branches of an old oak tree. A wild cat dwelt in a hole about the middle, and in the hollow part at the bottom lived a sow with a whole litter of pigs. They might have remained there long in contentment, but the cat, bent upon mischief, climbed up one day to the eagle and said, "Neighbor, have you noticed what the old sow who lives below is doing? I believe she is determined upon nothing less than to root up this tree, our abode, and when it falls she will devour our young ones." This put the eagle in a great fright, and she did not dare to stir from home lest the tree might fall in her absence. Creeping down to visit the sow, the wily cat said, "Listen to me, my friend. Last night I overheard that old bird who lives over our heads promise her young ones that the very next time you went out, they should have one of your dear little porkers for supper." The sow, greatly alarmed in her turn, dared not quit her hollow. The mutual fear of the eagle and the sow became so great that they and their young ones were actually starved to death and fell prey to the designing old cat and her kittens. Lesson: too much belief is worse than too little. The Sick Kite. A kite who had been ill for a long time begged of his mother to go to all the temples in the country and see what prayers and promises could do for his recovery. The old kite replied, "My son, unless you can think of an altar that neither of us has robbed, I fear that nothing can be done for you in that way." Lesson: be in health what you wish to be when you are ill. The Boasting Traveler. A man was one day entertaining a lot of fellows with an account of the wonders he had done when abroad on his travels. "I once was at Rhodes," said he, "and the people of Rhodes, you know, are famous for jumping. Well, I took a jump there that no other man could come within a yard of. That's a fact, and if we were there, I could bring you 10 men who would prove it." "What need is there to go to Rhodes for witnesses?" asked one of his hearers. "Just imagine that you are there now and show us your leap." Lesson: seeing is believing.